Corporate media, with the help of people like Jake Tapper, continue to just inaccurately tie inflation to government spending. In fact, recently Brian Deese, who's Biden's economic advisor, was on CNN talking to Jake Tapper about this exact issue. And I just want you to pay close attention to how Tapper frames his question here. Let's watch.
You talk about the Build Back Better Act, which is $1.75 trillion as a solution to this problem, but your predecessor under President Obama, Larry Summers, he pointed this week to the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that was passed earlier this year. In March, he said that's a major reason behind the rising inflation, something he called at the time, quote, the least responsible macroeconomic policy we've had in the last 40 years. Is it possible that Americans are suffering now from high prices because the Biden administration overstimulated the economy with all of this money going into the economy?
All right, I wanted to grab his question as a standalone clip just to respond to how stupid it is to bring up the arguments of Larry Summer, okay, who was Treasury Secretary at a time when Glass-Steagall was repealed, okay? A huge proponent of that, and we saw how that played out in the 2008 economic collapse. Why are we quoting the thoughts or the beliefs of a failure in an effort to tie inflation to what the Biden administration is doing? Secondly, just very curious, how exactly does policy that hasn't even passed yet, okay, like in the case of the budget reconciliation bill, have an impact on inflation that we're experiencing right now? How stupid was that framing?
So look, guys, it's almost an intentional lie. They're claiming basically that Biden has done too much and he's overstimulated the economy, as if he passed all three bills that he's pushing for. He only passed one, the COVID relief bill. The other one that just passed like a minute ago. How could it possibly have gone and gotten spent and affected the economy? That's the most disingenuous claim that anybody could possibly make. And the third one, Build Back Better, hasn't even passed. Isn't even close to passing. So the inflation is clearly because of supply chain issues. There are other issues around the edges like OPEC lowering supply that has made a difference in things like gas and its effects, etc. But to say, and they're doing it on purpose, when they never said any of this stuff. When under Trump, they were passing trillion dollar after trillion dollar after trillion dollar spending relief that went almost all the major corporations. And at that point, we're not worried about inflation. We're not worried about the debt. We're not worried about the deficit. It's an emergency, we gotta respond. Now, why are they all saying now, don't pass any more bills? No, inflation is because you're passing bills. Because the next bill would actually help you.
Totally.
And since it would help you, Jake Tapper despises it.
Jake, sleep easy, Jake. Sleep easy. Sleep easy. That reconciliation bill ain't going nowhere. You got what you want. The corporate Democrats got what they want. All of the Wall Street goons who salivated over the corporate handout bipartisan infrastructure bill got what they wanted. Don't worry. The nail is already in the coffin, okay? But to continue this lie, tying inflation to the reconciliation bill, is just so utterly maddening and ridiculous.
So
right?
I just want to give you two numbers here. The Federal Reserve was given in one of the COVID relief bills about $500 billion to give to massive corporations.
They need liquidity, Jake.
Okay, they need liquidity. You need liquidity. The poor corporations, you have to take care of the corporations first and foremost and with the most amount of money. Then on top of that, and there was, by the way, trillions more that went to corporations, but I'm just giving you the Federal Reserve part. And on top of that, the Federal Reserve said they were gonna put $2.3 trillion extra into shoring up liquidity for corporations. Now, do you think that might have had something to do with inflation?
You know what they did, by the way, with that money? You know what they did with that money? Like the whole idea, quantitative easing, okay, this really exploded during the Obama administration, was, well, there is an issue with getting money to ordinary people and to small businesses. So we need to provide liquidity, capital to banks. And the idea was that they were gonna loan it out to ordinary people like us. Did they do that? No, they didn't do it after the 2008 recession, and they're certainly not doing it during the COVID pandemic. They use it on corporate stock buybacks, artificially inflating share prices for their stocks, which by the way, corporate executives get paid mostly through stocks for their own companies. And they also, in the case of private equity firms, gobbled up all of this residential property, which they then turned into rentals because they wanted to corner the rental market. So, by the way, what did that do? That inflated housing prices. Will you hear Jake Tapper address that or ever talk about that? Of course not. But when it comes to the crumbs that we got from the Biden administration as a result of the economic relief bill he passed, what, the $1,200 checks? Oh, those $1,200 checks for Americans, it was just too much. That's what allegedly led to inflation. That is such a garbage way of framing what's happening in the economy right now.
If they were being even 1% honest, they would then ask other guests or that particular guest, hey, the $4 trillion we gave to the largest and most profitable corporations in the world, do you think that giant amount of money that we handed them might have had something to do with the surplus liquidity in all of the markets, which then leads to inflation? But isn't it weird that they never ask about that? That no one ever says, hey, how about that $2.3 trillion that the Federal Reserve pumped into the market? Might that lead to inflation? No, they only ask it in the context of, are they thinking of doing paid family leave? Where you would actually get to take a day off after you deliver? Oh, that's probably gonna do it. It's probably causing the inflation now. Just the thought that you might ever get one day off in your life years from now, that's probably causing the inflation, not the trillions we gave to the giant corporations. Corporate media are themselves multi-billion-dollar corporations. They are the most biased people in the world. Having them deliver the news is a joke.
All right, I'm gonna skip Brian Deese's answer because it wasn't that great and I don't really care. I think the Biden administration has done a poor job in fighting for their own policies and even defending their own policies on cable TV. So let's move on with it.
Yeah, he was super weak.
I'm now gonna
because they don't even really believe in their own policies.
So let's go to the Wall Street Journal. The editorial board, I think, is worth mentioning in this context because they put out this op-ed just recently, how to make spending unpopular. Government checks can't make up for the rising cost of living. And they state in the body of this op-ed with absolutely no evidence the following. The Biden Democrats may be achieving the impossible, which is making government spending unpopular. In March, they passed $1.9 trillion in goodies, including $300 in monthly child allowances. This and other free lunches were supposed to be the ticket to keeping their majorities in Congress. So what they're referring to there is the child tax credit. And the child tax credit is precisely what you think it is. It is a tax credit, meaning instead of having to wait till the end of the year to file your taxes to get a tax refund because of the child tax credit that exists, instead to help families out, they're like, hey, how about we just do a direct deposit in people's accounts, right, ever so often, so they can have that cash to take advantage of, throughout the year. But no. You know what? Those are just goodies. Those are just goodies. Because when it comes to tax cuts for working American families, those are goodies. But let me give you more. So they had written in response to Trump winning the Republican primary in 2016 this. This might be a silver lining if he wins in November. Assuming Republicans keep their House and Senate majorities, Congress would write the tax and healthcare reform bills. Remember, they're hoping for tax cuts for the rich here, okay? And our guess is Mr. Trump would accept nearly anything once he got his wall at the border. An economic growth revival is more likely with President Trump than President Hillary Clinton. So they love tax cuts, just no tax savings for working American families, just for the rich. But let me give you more. They mentioned Biden's low approval ratings, and after that they write, what gives? Our guess is that Democrats underestimated that voters take account of costs as well as benefits. They'll cash the government checks, but they don't feel better off because they know they're paying more at the grocery store, at the gas pump, or to replace that old dishwasher if they can even find a dishwasher to buy. Voters instinctively understand the link between runaway spending, easy monetary policy, and inflation.
Shut up.
No evidence for that argument whatsoever. Not a single link, not a reference to anything, just made it up out of whole cloth. There's one final part that I wanted to mention that they did not back up with any evidence. The White House is nonetheless pressing ahead to pass another $1.75 trillion bill. Are they really pressing ahead though?
They're not pressing anything.
Which is really $4 trillion.
Because while we're making things up, why don't we just make up that?
What there was, I don't know where they got that number from.
It's just a made up number.
Totally made up, claiming it will finally solve the party's political woes. Democrats are even pitching more spending as the solution to higher inflation because they say more welfare and entitlement payments will cause more people to work, which will reduce the economy's supply problems. No wonder half of all voters blame Biden for inflation.
No, they blame Biden for inflation as much as they do because all of the corporate media in unison is lying about it. All of you guys are doing massive propaganda, and again, it's easy to tell. Okay, did the Wall Street Journal editorial board do a scathing op-ed about how we gave away trillions to the largest corporations in the world? Turns out they didn't need it at all. And it turns out that's what caused inflation? No, when it goes to corporations, they love the tax giveaways and entitlements and all those goodies. What happened and why isn't it making the corporations fat and lazy and bums, right? No, whenever it's actually human beings, you guys are bums. You feel you're entitled to things. These guys are despicable. And then the absurd comments like, oh, the voters can obviously tell the link to monetary inflation and monetary policy. What are you talking about? You're just making things up. Oh yeah, my buddy over there at the American Enterprise Institute says that it's obvious that there's a link to monetary policy here and that the guys in the middle of the country understand that. No, all they hear is you guys lying in unison. You getting anything is terrible. You're a bum, and you're causing inflation. Don't you want it? You don't want it, don't want it. Give it all to my friends at the corporations. Corporate media, Wall Street Journal, CNN, and all of the rest of them, they're not in the news business. They're the marketing arm of corporate rule.
Absolutely.
And so as you look at this debacle here, we said, and again, you could judge us, you could judge them based on what actually happens. We told you that as soon as the House Democrats okayed the corporate-backed infrastructure bill, that everyone would turn around, Manchin, corporate Democrats, and the corporate media. They would all turn around and they would all tell you instantly, don't pass the next bill. Oh my God, we were gonna pass it, but XYZ, oh, inflation, this, squirrel, etc. Don't ever give anything to the American people, only to our corporate greed. That's who Jake Tapper is. That's who the Wall Street Journal is. They lie to you nonstop. What the hell does inflation have to do with bills that didn't pass?
Man, they have been citing Biden's low approval ratings nonstop, right? Which means they're paying attention to polls. But it is fascinating that they pay zero attention to the multiple polls indicating that the vast majority of ordinary Americans, including Republican voters, are in favor of the social spending bill as it was initially proposed by the Biden administration. Now it's been pared back to an embarrassment, and even that is unlikely to pass. So congratulations, Jake Tapper. You and the corporate media cartel have done a wonderful job in defeating the one last opportunity for the Democratic Party to do something that's even a little popular. So we'll see how it all plays out in 2022. My guess is not so well for the Democratic Party. They've certainly earned the failure that they're about to experience.
And I gotta say one last thing to build on top of what you're saying. I just looked at Washington Post ABC News poll today, and it says the bill is still over 60% popular. Right? And all the individual provisions are even more popular. So they turn around and then, even though they have the poll right in front of them saying no, and by the way, the bill also says 6 in 10 Americans, same number, 6 in 10 Americans say they're upset with Biden. Why? Because he did too much? No, because he did too little. That he hasn't done anything, that he hasn't delivered on his promises. So they take a poll where the people say, we want Biden to do more. And then they come out on air and they're like, people are concerned that Biden is doing too much. Well, that makes you a goddamn liar, okay? Do you know how to read a poll? Do you know what math is? Do you know what facts are? Stop lying to the American people. You're purposely poisoning their mind for your goddamn corporate agenda. That's what's happening. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.